me. Tea. And, yep, talking about more books. Today I wanted to explore, I'm freshly laundered, so excuse these splashes of water. But, yeah, I'm fresh, I am, looking to talk about a little bit more literature today. I'm diving into an author and a book of his that I've been interested in for a while, but never really read a lot of. That author is Ernest Hemingway. This is the book I'm going to be talking about. I also read For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is an interesting book, but kind of a separate, entity to The Sun Also Rises, which I'll be talking about today. And also, I read a long time ago for school. I read, it's somewhere over there, The Old Man and the Sea, which I really enjoyed, but I had never pursued Hemingway any further. But he's a really interesting, kind of eclectic author in that he covers a lot of kind of different subjects. He writes about a lot of different stuff. He's a really good writer, interesting writer. His dialogue specifically is pretty interesting. He has a kind of especially in The Sun Also Rises, he has an interesting way of capturing very lifelike dialogue, but also kind of it's not too surface. Like, it's still kind of in depth, and you still kind of get what's going on. And there's almost like a little bit of room for play in there. That's actually one thing that I want to say about The Sun Also Rises is it's a very nondescript book. It's not super in it. There's just not a lot of detail, and it's not totally clear to me what the actual purpose and message behind the book is. It kind of seems like a piece of art, and all pieces of art kind of encapsulate this idea to a certain extent. I think this, as far as like the spectrum of very much interpretive to kind of has a set meaning, something like a very specific meaning. The Sun Also Rises is like somewhere like right here. It's it seems like, I think people would read this and different people would get very different interpretations of what's going on and what the book means. But it's an interesting read. It's an entertaining read. I really enjoyed reading it. It's not really one of those books that I had to like force myself to turn the page or it was I got through it pretty easily and pretty well, and enjoyed getting through it. It's fairly short. I think it's like 200 some pages. Let me see, 250-ish. Yeah, 250. Actually, exactly 250. It's a really interesting book. It kind of covers the, not really the life, but the experiences of a man named Jake Barnes, and kind of this co-main character, Lady Brett Ashley, I think is her full title, and she and it is also, it kind of centers itself around those two and their group of friends, and it's kind of the story it revolves around Jake and Brett's relationship, which is a little confusing, not totally understood, not totally described. It seems like they're in love. They say that they're in love multiple times, but they also have this interesting way of expressing their love, which is not the normal way that people would do such a thing. It's they are very much there for each other, and they're very much seem to care about each other, but they also live in this they kind of both partake in this kind of I would call it kind of a frivolous existence, in that they're not settlers. They don't settle down really ever. Both of them are kind of all over the place, fairly affluent. Ashley Brett is married to a very rich man and goes on to marry more rich men, and kind of she's always kind of seeking this powerful man. And Jake is like a newspaper editor, or works for some newspaper. I can't really remember his exact job title, but he's well off. He does well, and it allows him to kind of exist comfortably and in style, as one might say. But yeah, it's about their life. They start in Paris. And it's a little bit about it's a very artistic book. You know, some stories are really stories, and it's hard to even kind of separate just a story from art, even though storytelling is a very powerful form of art. It's a very powerful art form. This one almost seems, it's very arty. It's just so, it's pretty abstract. That's a good word for it. It's very abstract. It's not, it's not descript. It doesn't give you a whole bunch of information to go off of. It just kind of throws you into these scenarios and situations and lets your mind wander on them, which I think is a really powerful and interesting thing that Hemingway did here. And so, yeah, you start in Paris, and it's kind of focusing on their lives in Paris a little bit. It's kind of oh, it's the life you would expect of some affluent people who live in Paris. They spend a lot of time in clubs and hanging out with big groups of people, a lot of friends, and it also focuses on their kind of friend circle, which oh man, here goes my terrible. I should make a list of names. The list of the names that are important that I need to remember, because I can remember their characteristics. You have this one guy who's, oh man, what's his name? Did they say it on the back? No. He has this one friend who's kind of I would say the third most prominent character in the book, and he is a bit of like a he's weird. He's kind of he's just not, I don't know, there's probably a word in the English language that would describe him. He's just not I think his name is Cone. He's just not very he's kind of almost like a failure to launch individual. He's not super he's just weird. He's strange. And he takes to Brett pretty heavily. He's already married. He like quasi divorces his wife while he's in Paris, which he doesn't really, but he basically tells her that. And it's kind of what I would say what this entire story centers around almost seems to be dysfunction. Like, you have this group of friends where each of them is kind of dysfunctional in their own way, and then when they get together, they are just entirely dysfunctional. Like, their encounters, especially when they're in a group, their encounters are just uncomfortable and kind of always either passive aggressive or openly aggressive, and it's just, yeah, it's not good. And I think that's kind of one of the central ideas of the book, is to kind of point out the kind of the emptiness that exists with frivolity, that exists with this kind of nebulous existence where you don't really have like set roots. You're just kind of floating around, having a good time, but at the same time you're kind of lacking that central meaning that people kind of desire and need and look for. And that's not to say that these people aren't looking for that. They probably are. They just don't really know where to look, and who really knows where to look when it comes to meaning and figuring out what really makes you happy in life. I'm certainly not professing to be someone who's familiar with that feeling or has mastered that feeling. I mean, I've felt meaning in my life before, but I'm certainly not a master, and certainly could do with a little bit more. But yeah, it certainly seems to center around that idea of dysfunctionality, with not only within a singular person, but within a group of people, and how that dysfunction can kind of play out in the world, because they're not totally, they're pleasant people. They seem to be doing their best, I guess would be generous. They're just kind of yeah, they're a little dysfunctional, but they're not unpleasant. Some of them are. There's this one man in particular, Brett's kind of second husband, who she brings, their second journey that they embark upon kind of as a group of friends, is down to this a town in Spain. I want to say Pamplona, but I don't think it's that big. It is a town that has bullfights and does the bull run, but I don't think it's Pamplona. It was some other town in Spain. And anyway, they go down there as a group, and oh, maybe it is Pamplona. I just saw Pamplona in the book. Some town in Spain where they go to watch bullfights, and Jake goes to do some fishing with a friend of his that lives down there. And yeah, that's actually another interesting point about about the book is the most serene and kind of meaningful and just kind of like peaceful, really beautiful scenes that exist within the book that are not only described beautifully but kind of give you this sense of like, oh, things are good right now. The only time those ever really exist are when you seem to get two people who really care for each other. Um, when it kind of wells up inside you, where you're like, oh, this is a nice scene. Um, One of those is Jake and his I would say his real friend that he goes fishing with. They go up to another town in Spain and do some fishing around that area, and it kind of describes their journey to and from the lakes and stuff, and their experiences while they're fishing, and it's just right. It just feels right. And then when they get back and they get around the group again, things start to get like more dysfunctional and angsty, and you start feeling like, oh man, this is a really shitty group of friends. Like, it's just not. It's just strange. And then you also experience that a little bit between Brett and Jake. Like every once in a while, they have like these kind of really beautiful moments where they're both kind of realizing that I think we love each other, but then usually Brett will be like, "But I can't. I'm just like I'm too much." Like a little. She kind of dives headfirst into her role as looking for the nice word, a runaround, I guess. She enjoys the company of of different men, and grows bored with men, and that's just kind of the nature of her character, and it's not right or wrong. It's just what she does, and she's very aware of that, and she's not really interested in settling down with Jake. I think part of that is because she knows that she might actually be happy if she did that. It's almost like this weird resistance that she has to her own happiness, because she talks a lot about how she mentions it multiple times. I mean, not talks a lot, but she mentions multiple times that how she knows that she would be happy with Jake. She knows that she's in love with him, and she knows that she enjoys his company. She's just not. It's not for her for whatever reason, and she never goes into detail about that. She's just kind of like, yeah, it's not interested in that. Although I am, but I'm not. It's kind of a funny and not interaction, a funny rapport that those two have, is that they're both aware of their feelings for each other, but they're also kind of averse to it. And yeah, it's a really interesting kind of overview, a really interesting outlining. There's another word I'm looking for, but I can't think of it. A really interesting look into just, and dysfunctional is not even really the right word. It's just, this is how these people function. And to me, nah, you could probably function better if you tried harder. But it's a really interesting look into what I would call kind of this, the characteristics of a frivolous existence. Yeah, and I would say that's fair, because these people, they just don't have a lot of roots other than their jobs, and even someone like Brett, who has like zero roots. She is married once to a very affluent man, then goes and marries another affluent man, and you would think these are her roots, but she always finds a reason to move on to somebody else. When they're watching the bullfight, she kind of falls in love with the star bullfighter who is like a young 20-some-year-old, and she's like 35, but she falls in love with him, and then they go off and get married, and then she leaves him for some reason or another and sends Jake this letter. She's like, I need help, and where are they at? They went somewhere in Spain, or maybe even like Portugal or something. I can't remember where they went, but they went somewhere, and she sends a letter to Jake, and it's kind of and Jake accepts. Jake's kind of just like good old boy, like, and it's a good thing. You should always be there for people that you love, even if it's like really painful and not necessarily things don't work out the way that you want. It doesn't matter, because you care for that person and you want the best for them, and you should always be willing to help them. And that's a harder thing to do in real life than just me saying it, but it's true. I mean, if you care for somebody and who they are, then yeah, you should always do your best to help them. And that's kind of a beautiful part of these two people's relationship, Brett and Jake's relationship. But it's also, I keep wanting to say dysfunctional. it's not really my place to say that's dysfunctional, but it's hmm, I don't. It's a little strange. It's not. It's in the kind of in my cynical mind, I would say it's a little strange, a little. I don't know. You do what you do. They do what they do, and they. I'm like completely rewinding the dysfunctional thing in my mind. I'm like, well, it's not that they're entirely dysfunctional. It's just they are frivolous. I'm gonna stick to that point because they don't have these roots, and yeah, so they just kind of float in the ether of existence and are having a good time while they're doing it. And it's not my place to say that's dysfunctional. It's just my place to describe it as frivolous, which I do believe is a fair assessment. And yeah, the book kind of ends another actually really kind of beautiful and calm scene, a scene where meaning seems to eke back into the literature is when Jake finally leaves the unnamed, possibly Pamplona town in Spain, and goes to San Sebastian. I remember that one. He goes to San Sebastian for a few, I think like a few days or possibly even a week or so before he goes back to Paris, and he's just alone, and he's just like swimming and doing all these seemingly ordinary things, but it's that time alone for him and that time kind of contemplation and just and no real worries in the context of his friends, and is it seems seemingly peaceful for him, and maybe that's kind of a sign that he's kind of in his element. He's not really I don't want to say not a people person because he has a lot of friends, but he's not he's just he's free. He's experiencing the freedom of the freedom of his frivolousness, and I think that's when things kind of get most peaceful, I guess. And that's not necessarily congruous with my earlier point. I don't know. I have no clue what Ernest Hemingway was trying to say in this novel. I enjoyed reading it though, and I'll probably read it a million other times because as far as Hemingway goes, this is probably my new favorite, if not tied favorite with The Old Man and the Sea, because I really enjoyed that one too. And that's a very short read. It's like 100 pages, if that. So yeah, I would check this out. Draw your own conclusions from it, because I don't know. I don't have any. I just talked about it for 20 minutes and completely unsaid what I'd said in the beginning part, and then said some other stuff that made no sense. So it's kind of it's just a very nebulous novel. The very nondescript and very it just doesn't give you much. It gives you the dialogue between these people and a little bit of description about who they are, but it's just like I was explaining it to I think my mom. I told her I just finished reading it, and she's like, "Oh, what's it about?" And I was like, I don't know. Like, it's a story about some people and what they did. It's not. It's like it hardly has a beginning in it. It's just interesting though. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed its abstract nature, and I would recommend it because it's a good read. It's interesting, and Ernest Hemingway is a really fantastic author. He has a really good way with words and prose. He was very praised for his prose. That was a nice little piece of alliteration there. And then I also read For Whom the Bell Tolls, which maybe I'll do a video on that too. But I might want to read this again before I do. It's a pretty simple. It seems like a pretty simple story. It's almost it's very opposite. I wouldn't say very opposite to this. It kind of throws you into, but I mean, all books throw you into a point. This just throws you into like nothingness, which is a little weird, but it's hardly a story. But it's good. And this is more of a concrete story that has like clear meanings, or not clear meanings, but clear events that are happening for certain reasons. It kind of, it follows a story. It follows as a story should. While this doesn't necessarily not follow as a story. I'm just going to keep saying things and then unsaying them. it's just strange. Read it. It's strange, but it's good, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, Ernest Hemingway. He's a cool novelist, cool author, very smart guy, and I really enjoy his stuff. So I'll probably read more. I don't know how many books that guy wrote, but probably a lot. I don't know. I think he did some short stories or something. But yeah, this video amounted to nothing, but it was fun to talk about. That's one thing about this book that I really like is, above all things, it's just kind of fun to read, to like get a glimpse into this kind of painting of this the picture of this guy's life that Ernest Hemingway took by way of story. And it's a really good that's one thing that's really good about it is the characters. And maybe that's kind of it might have almost been an exercise in like character development, but without like the need for past stuff, because there are no there's no setup. There's no, this is Jake, and they don't give you a whole bunch of information about these characters. You just kind of get thrown in, and you kind of just have to suss out who they are from their inner dialogue. Like, there's a lot of inner dialogue from Jake, but you have to, everyone else just kind of suss out who they are by way of their dialogue and what they say and the things that they think are important and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a cool book. I would not recommend it. I would recommend it to anyone who is interested in reading. Yeah, cool book. I probably all I have to say about it. I'm gonna read it again and maybe have more to say about it. But that's all I have to say about it after a first reading, which was not a lot because I said something and then unsaid it. But other than that, it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. And most people are probably off work by now because it's like 5 p.m. But I'm weird and I work third shift, so I still have to go to work. Although technically it's my Saturday. Overtime. But yeah. Have a wonderful Friday, a good weekend, and read books. Good books, not bad books. Although good, that's kind of a subjective statement. Bye.